Welcome back. This time, I would like to discuss a bit about Trump's foreign policy picks, and they just confirm what we know. In the first place, let's talk about Marco Rubio. His stances are very clear about Israel and Iran. He's a hawk on both issues and ambivalent on the issues of Ukraine. Uh, then we have the pick of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Hegseth is also a hawk on the issues of Israel and Iran, and has criticized U.S. involvement in Ukraine. His national security advisor, Mike Waltz, is no surprise also a hawk on Iran and Israel. In the case of Mike Huckabee, U.S. ambassador to Israel, he is not just pro-Israel. Understood, if we understand that as pro-Netanyahu, of course, because you must remember that when Sharon split from Likud and created Kadima, he was no longer the prime minister of the chosen people, and the Christian right here in the United States celebrated when he got a stroke. But he has been openly in favor of settlements, and no surprise, thanks to Biden, the Ben-Gvir wing, the Ben-Gvir Smotrich wing of Netanyahu's coalition has prevailed, and they want to resettle the Gaza and to expand settlements or even take over the whole West Bank. Then we have Tulsi Gabbard, whose pro-Putin record is well known. So she, as well as the nominee for Secretary of Defense, are going to side heavily on the side of Putin. Now, if you pay attention, you see that these are wannabes or have-beens. They are not heavyweights. They are not in their primes. That means that even some have called this the Apprentice White House edition, because and why would you ask would Trump have such picks? Is because they will do, if they aspire to any chance of reviving their careers, their political careers, they will have to do as Trump says. It's not like the heavyweights of the right wing Trump recruited in his first administration. Now, as you see, if you have watched my other videos, you see how what a harsh critic I am of the Biden administration. And the sins of the Biden administration are going to be capitalized by Trump. Besides, of course, the mediocre complicity of the traditional media. But they are going to be capitalized on the case of Israel and Palestine, because thanks to Biden, Olmert's plan never got a serious consideration. The Israel's opposition is going to stay fragmented, and what should have been our main goal in the Middle East, which is reviving Iran's nuclear deal, is going to stay dead. Then on the side of Ukraine, which in my opinion is still the should be the main issue on our foreign policy, is going to end in a shameful defeat for Ukraine, as the West, without Trump support and facing budgetary problems like in Germany and the United Kingdom, are going to push Ukraine to a shameful negotiation that will elevate Putin to the status of chief senior partner, and Putin is going to imprint his privateer standard, and he is going to weigh in our relations with China, especially if China cannot fix his model of excess capacity and exports. So any hope of bringing China to a relationship closer to the one we had with Japan in the 1980s and 90s is going to evaporate. Now, if you're naive, you are going to ask, but what is the matter is that we have to find out what is Trump's philosophy. Well, he doesn't have a philosophy. If you have read his biography written by David K. Johnston, who is the best biography, in my opinion, of Trump's, you will see that he has interests, not opinions. And when his opinions collide with his interests always win. So those are the issues that are going to perish in limbo because the Biden administration was extremely mediocre, was much worse than Carter's, almost as bad as Mike Pompeo's, and that should give us a lesson. Blinken, Sullivan, and Kirby should never be allowed again anywhere close to foreign policy, anywhere, either in academia, in government, or in think tanks. That this kind of gross mistakes should not be allowed in people who want to set policy or wait on public opinion. Then let me talk just very briefly about what we know about his economic policy. Let me recommend you an article written by David Lynch, my favorite reporter on economic issues in the Washington Post, and it's about the beliefs behind tariffs in the Trump administration. Besides that, you can also read the most recent article about tariffs written by Paul Krugman, and one summary, if you want, or the whole report written by the Peterson Institute about this issue. So I don't want to go deep into the details. You can read them by yourselves. Besides that, there's nothing new I can say that I have not said before in my video about the economy. But the point I would like to address here is what happens if the harmful effects of these tariffs affect the economy before in the next 2 years, before the midterm elections. Then I don't want to be a killjoy, but the harmful effects of these tariffs could be countered partially by Biden's economic recovery. Now that the inflation is waning, inflation uncertainty is going to wane too. He's going to appropriate that recovery the same way that in 2017 he appropriated Obama's recovery, and we know Democrats are not going to contradict him. So people will end up believing him because that's the way the Democratic Party is. Then something that also happened in his first administration was putting pressure on the way statistics are worked and on the Federal Reserve. And let's not forget that Powell's mandate ends in 2026. So he could put a more accommodating Federal Reserve chair that is going to repeat Nixon's history of manipulating monetary policy. You can read about that in Jeff Madrick's Age of Greed, how that unleashed terrible effects during the Carter administration and led in part to the inflation and then to the stagflation that resulted of that kind of policy. Now, let me conclude with the fact that you may say, well, but the business community should react if these tariffs, the harmful effect of these tariffs gets out of control. But don't forget that Trump has one model that is the Viktor Orban's model, that is the most moderate version of Putin's Russia. It's a kind of crony capitalism where anybody who is not happy, happy supporter of the regime, is could see his wealth evaporate and find himself separated from the business community. Then there is another effect that we could add to the harmful effects of these tariffs, but we are not going to see it in the short term. Probably they are not going to be seen, but until Trump leaves office, which is something that started with the Biden administration, that is the ridiculous, stupid, myopic way in which Biden pushed China's Xi, Iran's Pezeshkian, and North Korea Kim in Putin's direction. Of course, and Putin, who is not stupid, has bypassed China in his relations with North Korea and Iran, which will leave Xi no option but join the Axis. And then we will be in problem, because we know, if you take into account the example of Africa, we know the way Putin understands foreign policy and trade. And finally, one mention about the role of misogyny, racism, and the lack of the fact that we didn't have a primary to nominate Kamala Harris, the role these factors played in her defeat. Well, they were marginal at best. They were not the main reason. If you see the graphic by Real Clear Politics, you see that from late July, when Biden dropped out of the race, to early September, if you see Kamala Harris' approval before Biden dropped to the way she spectacularly rose after she presented her economic proposals, you will see that that could not validate the misogyny, racism, and primaries argument, because what happened during that period, misogyny, racism, and discontent with the lack of primaries took a break. No, she rose. The reason we should see is why she flattened after that period while Trump kept rising. And that has to do with the two main reasons I mentioned in my previous video, which is that the Democratic Party stopped being the party of FDR and turned its back to the working class, and to the fact that wokeism trivialized, irritated the working class, trivialized the issues that we consider dear, and turn issues like immigration and transgender rights toxic. So if we don't, we have to follow the advice given by FDR. We have to admit the mistakes, frankly, and try something else. And if we don't do that, we should not be surprised of getting another Biden, another mediocre president, who is going to start well but turn immediately into light Republican, or get another or get banned, the banned first administration. It's this channel is dedicated precisely to creating those ideas, to giving a platform to those ideas which we can use to push politicians in the right direction. But that endeavor is fruitless, will be fruitless, ineffective, if you don't support it. And please subscribe and share it, give it visibility, use the commentary box to propose ideas, to propose issues, and we can build that platform together. Otherwise, we don't have a right to complain. We have a president of FDR, the head of the working class, and we have decided instead to turn into the Joe Bidens, who look always weak, apologetic, and who, of course, don't have a chance to be reelected. Having said that, thank you, and I'll leave you with our news report.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of the hour. Among other news, Chancellor of Germany Olaf Scholz declared yesterday that the Social Democratic Party's strategy to stop ADF, the far-right party that is currently second in the polls, consists of showing fear of Putin. Only by showing moderation and fear will we counter the energy shown by our opponents. In the end, Germans will appreciate our weakness, consider it presidential, and decline to support the bullies who offer to solve the problems we are doing nothing to address. It's like when I was at the Gymnasium German, highest level of high school. After all, who identifies with the bully? Who? Declared Chancellor Scholz. President Biden issued a communique declaring his full agreement with his colleague, the German Chancellor. Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, announced a grant for the University of Florence to build giant solar panels that make the Mediterranean waters boil. We are confident that this new invention, by turning the waters extremely hot, will deter new waves of illegal immigration from coming to our coasts. MI6 is currently investigating a leak of intelligence provided to the United States about an imminent terrorist attack on American soil. The leaked document described a conspiracy to launch a nuclear weapon at the United States by way of Washington, D.C. by using canoes in the Atlantic Ocean and a giant slingshot. We had access to specifics about the elasticity of the bands, and that's why we know that this was a serious threat. At least we can rest assured that this plot was aborted, declared former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Biden makes counterproposal to Zelensky's victory plan. Because President Biden has to use all resources available to help his friend Bibi in Israel. We have offered the Ukrainian president our moral support and a speech to back a Kickstarter campaign to be used to fund the Ukrainian army until 2025, declared National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Trump offers full support to Netanyahu but, different from Biden, he declared he would not back the Israeli Prime Minister unconditionally. As proof of that, the presidential candidate shared with the American public opinion the price list he gave Netanyahu. 1. Regular aid, $4 billion aid, package the United States normally provides Israel. 2. Israel Advantage, $12 billion aid plus 2 brigades to clear up Gaza and the West Bank for new Israeli settlements. This package requires Israel to pay the Trump Organization 10% of the aforementioned amount. 3. Israel Premium, $8 billion aid plus 3 brigades to be sitting ducks in order to get an excuse to go after Iran. This package requires Israel to issue permits to build 2 Trump hotels in Tel Aviv and 5% royalty for mandatory use of Trump's name by Israeli tech companies Mobileye and CyberArk. Following the advice of Secretary of State Blinken and National Security Sullivan, President Biden will implement a new China policy. 1. Selling $1 billion to Taiwan and the Philippines each so they can defend themselves against China even though there is no wargame scenario where they can stop China without the United States' involvement. 2. Bad-mouthing President Xi on social media with armies of trolls that will do ghosting to his posts and create memes of him. 3. Banning Americans from investing in TikTok and Panda Express. After learning of President Biden's new policy, President Xi laughed and called President Putin to announce China would join North Korea militarily in their support of Vladimir Putin in the Ukraine war. Likewise, President Pezeshkian announced Iran would also join the new coalition. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu again kidnapped President Biden in new visit to Tel Aviv. The president was released after he agreed to campaign for Vice President Harris against her wishes. Bibi is my friend, declared President Biden. It's just that he hasn't learned yet the lessons of 9/11, but I beat Medicare. Reacting to the news, former Senator Kerry declared, he did the same to me in 2014. But Bibi is my friend too. Far-right personalities Laura Loomer and Ann Coulter met at a Kentucky event and were taken by fans as part of shock rock singer Marilyn Manson's band. Them ladies look like the real ones from the Manson crew, declared a fan. Once the misunderstanding was clarified, it happened they had been convoked by a fellow right-winger, Pastor Randy Adams, to witness the second coming of Jesus. To the brethren's disappointment, Jesus came back but called for compassion for immigrants, gays, and the poor and was immediately re-crucified as, evidently, an impostor. The real Jesus would have called a mob to expel colored immigrants, the gays, and the poor from the good USA as real Jesus expelled the money changers from the temple. It's just common sense, declared Pastor Adams. Trying to revert their low appeal among the working class. DNC Chair Jamie Harrison convoked strategists from the woke left to draft a new strategy leading to this end. The latter came up with a comprehensive plan that includes 1. Male blue-collars will have to attend workshops to deconstruct toxic masculinity as a condition of employment. 2. Blue-collars will have to ask one another their pronouns every day just after clocking in order not to invisibilize gender-fluid people. 3. Blue-collars will attend pride marches on their days off. The options will be LGBTQ+ pride, Latinx pride, BLM pride, and other BIPOC pride. 4. White blue-collars will have to apologize for slavery as part of their annual evaluation. 5. Just after clocking out, blue-collars will be invited to discussion groups where they will discuss inclusion and representation in the series, movies, and video games approved by the woke strategists, who also will become DEI consultants of these companies. 6. Blue collars will have to display the colors of the diversity flags that represent them as part of their uniforms. Acceptable pieces of clothing for this end will be scarves, shawls, kerchiefs, and others approved by the DEI consultants. 7. Blue collars will have to account for at least one intimate experience with a BIPOC or LGBTQ+ person as part of their annual evaluation. Blue collars will be deducted $480 in 2025, payable in monthly $50 installments, to contribute to financing these activities.
This has been the news for this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.